right, so we're ready to go. So tonight we're going to go into the ABCs of behavior. What you guys have that I handed out to you is a process that we're going to use at the end of the class today. There are steps in designing individual interventions, antecedent strategies, just listings of each of the different strategies, and function-based interventions, and different things like that that will help you do the activity. So at the end of class, I'm going to have you guys break up into pairs, and you're going to create an intervention for a case study. The case study that's on this. This is what you're going to do at the end of class, but it'll be in each page will have a different step. So you're going to create a long one, and then I want to collect them, and I'll post them on the board because it'll be kind of fun. I have some markers for us to do this with, so I want to make this an enjoyable activity for you guys. All right, and so I sent you kind of a timeline for the next 3 weeks. Next week, we're doing your group presentations on the theoretical foundations of emotional and behavior disorders. So please have that already. Then the following week, we'll do the social maladjustment discussion. That'll be the whole thing we do in class that day, is social maladjustment discussion. Is there really, do we need to separate it out? You know, those kind of things. You read that technical assistance paper, it'll give you some guidance on what that means. I'll give you more guidance as we get into that activity. And then the following week is, see, that's 1, 2. I forget what I wrote to you guys on the following week. Let me see if I didn't delete that email.
So the discussion points that we made for today before class is going to be used not next week, but the week after?
Right.
Okay.
Right, because next week we're doing the presentations. And then the week after is the,
Gotcha.
right. So it's in an email I sent to you guys.
That was before class, right?
Yeah, upload those into class into D2L. Your discussion questions in D2L. Then, you know, face recognition doesn't look good in Facebook.
So you open the social.
And then the following week, next week, and then the next week is 311. Yeah, today we're doing the 1, 2. I knew it's 3 things. Today we're doing the ABCs of behavior. Next week we're doing the presentations. And then the following week, I believe that's the 11th. Maybe that's the wrong date, but the following week we'll do social maladjustment.
Is it possible for you to reopen the Dropbox for that?
Pardon?
Someone asked if you could reopen the Dropbox.
Yeah, I thought I had it.
Yeah. Pretty close.
If it's not fixed, I'll fix it.
Okay.
Shoot me an email. I'll remember. I'm over 60 now, so my memory is kind of spotty sometimes. I need a reminder. You know, 2x4 upside the head, something like that. You know? That would be a threat of a 2x4 upside the head. That's a negative reinforcement.
I was about to say, we seem to offer you chocolates like Sheldon did when we reopened the Dropboxes for us, you know, and offer you some chocolates.
All right, so we're going to get started on the ABCs of behavior and see what that's all about. And this comes right out of the Texas Behavior Support Initiative process, which is a positive behavior intervention and support process, but it's out of Texas. Back in the early 1990s, that's a long time ago, I was part of the team that developed these trainings for the regional services around the state. So this is kind of near and dear to my heart. So we're going to walk through these. So you had the foundation stones of behavior. So remember those. Those are those things about how behaviors learned, environment, etc. And now we're going to put that all together into making fruition, making things seem more focused. Okay. So now let's look at these. So ABCs of behavior. The first A, that A stands for antecedent. And so when we break the term down, antecedent, the prefix is ante. What does that mean? So if you go into a house and they have an anteroom, what is that? That's a little meeting room before you get to the big rooms, right? So it's before something. Ante means before, not anti, but it's ante. And then cedent means what happened, what's happening. So put them together means what happened right before a behavior. So let's think of behavior as a chain, all right? So when we think of a chain of behavior, we'll think of three links. Get the first link is the antecedent. It's what happened before. And usually we want to know what happened right before. So an antecedent, let me turn off this light so you can see. There. It's kind of goofy. That one turns the second light on. Okay. Enough of that. My OCD is showing. All right. Now then, if we look at this, we see these are the events that happened right before the target behavior. Remember, we talked about the target behavior as the behavior we're wanting to change. Target behaviors are the behaviors we wanted to change. So this student tends to walk around the classroom disrupting others maybe when he's given an academic task. So we need to know how we can change that. When we were looking at the antecedent, what happened right before. Given a specific task, somebody might have a verbal refusal. Given group work, they tend to mess around and talk with their peers rather than do the work. So those are antecedents that happened right before the event or the behavior occurred. So there's something else that we need to think about is when we think about antecedents, there are two types of antecedents. I thought I brought new pens. Real quick. There are two types of antecedents. We have setting antecedents and triggering antecedents. And those are really, 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 really important things. Now, let's think of, we live in Texas, so a lot of us might have weapons. So let's think of guns. We're going to think of a revolver, not an automatic handgun like a 9mm. A typical revolver, you have to set the revolver up to shoot the bullet before it triggers the bullet. That's cocking the gun. Or on an automatic, it would be, getting the bullet into the chamber. That's the setting antecedents. Setting antecedents can happen a day, a week, a month before the triggering antecedents. Most often it happens that like before the class before. So for example, the first period class, you have a student that comes to class and he walks into the class and your first thing that you have your class do is the daily journaling. You have them journal about how they're doing, what's going on at home, so whatever, just getting them to write. So you have a specific writing prompt on the board. And Johnny comes in the door and you say, "Hi, Johnny, how you doing? Sit down, here's the writing prompt." And Johnny takes his backpack and hurls it across the room. So when we look at that, what would be the antecedent before the behavior of hurling the backpack across the room? What would it be? The writing prompt. Okay? But did the writing prompt really cause him to do that? Or was there something else going on that set him up to have the bullet being shot, in a sense? So you say, "Hey, Johnny, let's come sit down over here and just calm down for a second and see what's going on." So you start talking to Johnny and you find out that on the bus to school that day, he was being bullied by the older kids. And the older kids were calling him really horrible names, etc. And so he did not want to be in school. So as soon as he walked in the door, he didn't want to write anything down. He didn't want to do anything. He just wanted to go and just decompress for 5 minutes before he started class. But he didn't really have the skills to verbalize and say to the teacher, "I just need to catch my breath," you know? And so he didn't know how to do that. So he threw his backpack across the room. Now, the function of the behavior was to escape the activity. We'll get to functions in a bit. But the thing is, if you think about it, the activity of writing had nothing to do with his behavior. He was set up in a sense. He was primed. He was setting antecedents of being bullied, was ready for him to shoot that gun, the bullet, the behavior. All behaviors will have some kind of setting antecedent that's going on before you, the teacher, gets to interact with the student. Here's the interesting thing. How much control do you think you have over the setting antecedents that the students experience? Let's do this. Let's say 5 is complete control and 0 is no control. So let's do this. Who thinks 5? Who thinks 4? 3, 2, 1, or none? Most of the time, you don't have much control at all over setting antecedents. You might have a little bit if it's happening in your classroom. But if it's outside of your classroom where you're the king or queen of your domain in your classroom. But outside the classroom in the bus, oh my God, are the most favorite place, the lunchroom, or the passing period, are out in the back 40 and during recess, where all the kids end up getting in trouble, where you learn your most diplomatic skills out in the back 40. But we have very little control over that, but we have total control over triggering antecedents. So for that kid, what we would have done is we would have said, "Johnny, you need to have a signal to your teacher to say that you're needing decompression moment. So what we're going to do is that she comes in and she gives you a thumbs up, you're going to do this. That means you need a decompression moment. Or she says hello. So that's her sign to you, for you to her, to let her know. And she'll say, there you go. And then when you're ready to go, you give her the thumbs up and you get things going. How does that work? And it works. We did that all the time with kids. Give them some powers and responsibility. Took the whole issue over the triggering antecedent away, his behavior changed. See the chain of behavior change? The antecedent caused the behavior, and then the behavior, there's a consequence, we get in trouble. So we're going to see how these all walk through. So setting and triggering antecedents have significant effect over how that student engages in the next piece of the chain of the triggering piece. So, like for this example, maybe his walking around the classroom is to escape the academic task. Do we have any clue about that yet? What happens if it's walking around the classroom to get attention from others? We don't know that yet. So we don't have enough information, but all we know right now, when we're describing the change of behavior, this is what happened right before this behavior occurred. So we have to go back and analyze this piece. But this is the antecedent, the thing that happens right before that. Then you have the given task, same thing, and same thing. So we're trying to get a clearer picture of what's going on. So that's the whole piece on antecedents. Let's see. Here's another example of antecedent walking around. The most common time for aggressive behavior is in unstructured situations. So if we structure situations, less likely to have aggressive behaviors occurring in the classroom or in school. All right. Then we need to look at the second chain is second link in the chain is the behavior, what they did, what exactly did they do? And then the third link in this behavior chain is the consequence. Now remember, a consequence is neither positive or negative. In this class, when I say a consequence, it is a resulting something that happens after a behavior. It could be good, it could be bad, depends, but it's a consequence. Most often, the consequence is what maintains that behavior over time. So if it's something that maintains that behavior over time, it's doing what to the behavior? Some way, somehow, is it punishing or reinforcing? If it maintains the behavior over time, it's really not decreasing it, so it can't be what? A punisher. Because a punisher decreases that over time. A lot of times we get kids that act out and the teacher says, oh, Johnny, stop doing that. And that's actually a positive reinforcer. Or how many of you heard in your classroom management class, they put your name on the board? So they put, let's say somebody acts out, so they put their name on the board. So Garth, his name is on the board for acting bad. What's happening with Garth? Every time he looks up and he sees his name, he says, hey, isn't that cool? My name's on the board. I'm famous. And remember, it's better to be a bad boy than it is to be feel like you're not capable of doing something. So now he's famous. This kind of the popsicle sticks, the where you move their stick to red, green, whatever, those things, they work great for kids that want to act good. But they don't work at all for kids that don't want to act good. They're horrible. They actually reinforce the inappropriate behaviors because they get to see their stick move, you know? Think about it for a minute. So name on the board, that works for great for kids that want to act good, but it works terrible. It doesn't work at all for the kids that act bad. So that's important pieces that we need to remember. So this is where we have a behavior, and then we see exactly what happened right after that behavior. And we look at that, and these are things, when we start looking at these things, we can kind of start seeing, okay, if the student did a behavior, and then he was given a timeout, where he doesn't have to do the task, what do you think that, does that go with escape or obtain? It's kind of an escape, isn't it? So you're starting to see how it kind of works. What about if the teacher gives praise and attention, or gives attention? Is that like to get something? Get attention? Free time, that could be give free time. It depends on what the things are. But if it maintains that behavior over time, it's a reinforcer of that behavior. So we need to understand those pieces. So we have a behavior. What exactly was the behavior? Then the consequence, what immediately happened after the behavior. When you're training a dog not to pee or poop in the house, if you come in after being out for 2 hours and they pooped in the house, do you shove their nose in the poop and swat them and say, bad girl, bad boy? No, they don't have any clue what they did. Their memories about being big. You know, that's why when you walk through the door, they get so excited. Oh, it's you! I'm so excited, it's you. Now they have a very short attention span. It has to be immediately after the behavior, so they can associate that to that behavior. Does that make sense? Because if it's later on, they go, okay, what did I do to get that? What did I do to deserve that? They have no clue. So, and the same thing with saying a reward, like after the consequence, after you say, good job. Kids thinking, well, I did a good job, but why did I do a good job in? Does that make sense? So you got to name the behavior that they did good with. So when you do give a consequence, you say, good job taking notes. Outstanding job taking notes. Good job sitting in your seat. You positively give that. Good job putting your stuff away. Good job talking nicely to your next door neighbor. Those kind of things. But you name the behavior that they did good or that they didn't do as well. Your handwriting needs, you can improve the clarity of your handwriting. I have struggled whenever it's a negative. I'm trying to give it a positive spin. It's hard, but you give a positive spin as much as possible. So this is that's the ABC. Antecedent. Antecedent stands for what? What happened before. The behavior is what they did. The consequence is what? Whatever happen immediately after the behavior. And it will maintain that behavior over time. All right. So that's the ABCs. Then, once we got that down, we start looking at functions of behavior. Oh, this is terrible. This says, these are some real common things for obtain and to internally and externally. We're going to look at these. You have two types of functions: to get something or to avoid something. And it's something internal or something external. So, for example, rocking in a chair and it calms your stress, or getting out in a swing and it calms your stress. That's one. External, to get something, cursing to get peer attention, telling off-color jokes to get attention, disrupting the class to get attention. Those are things. External. An example of internal: walking out of the class to avoid embarrassment. See, it's an internal feeling. That's escape, internal. Hitting a teacher to escape a task. That's an external behavior. See how those are a little different, but it's escape versus to avoid embarrassment, those kind of things. So get something or to escape something. That is the big takeaways. Here are some functions and some of the most problem behaviors. It really depends a lot, but for the most part, these are the things. A lot of times it's get attention. It could be just getting adult attention rather than a student's attention. It could be getting some kind of tangible item. How many of you have gone to Walmart? I'll use Walmart because it's a plethora of inappropriate behavior things happening all the time. And I'm a people watcher. And I've watched moms and dads go up and down the aisles and they get to the front counter and watch right at the kids' viewpoint, right at the front counter. Candy and soda pop. And so mom or dad's trying to get everything out of the basket. What are the kids doing? Mom, can I have this? Mom, can I have this? Mom, can I have this? And what does the mom do? Or dad? Takes it, throws it in the basket, throws it on the thing, and says, just shut up, gets the mind going. But what has she just done? She's positively reinforced that behavior. So next time they go through the line, what's going to happen? It's going to happen right away, So, and so you see that all the time, and it's immediate gratification rather than delayed gratification, those kind of things. So that's a function of get a reward or a tangible, get a reinforcer. There. Could be gain access to preferred activity. I know kids that will act out. They're on their computer time in class and they act out because they don't want to leave the computer, and the teacher says you get 5 more minutes, and doesn't reinforce all that stuff. Just doesn't get him away from that, but it reinforces him doing that delay tactic. Could be escape or delay doing a thing. Oh, I do that all the time. I'm such a procrastinator. How many of us put off doing the assignment till the last day? Just this week, I had a president's posting I needed to make for the Teaching Exceptional Children magazine. And it was due yesterday. Guess when I did it? Yesterday. But, you do what you do. It could be escaping or avoiding a demanding situations. Like now, my wife she's so funny, drives me nuts. January 1, she says, hey, Dennis, let's get our taxes together so we can do our taxes. I said, honey, we got that April 15th. She says, I want to know if we're going to get anything or have to pay anything, and that kind of thing. I want to delay it till 14th to do it on the 14th. She wants to get it done as soon as we can. So. And guess what? We do it as soon as we can. That's been a good husband. And then my stress goes away because it's always okay. Hate it. All right, but you do things to escape or avoid demanding situation. Kind of functions in most problem behaviors. All right, so let's look. This is a chain of behaviors put together. Let's walk through it. Let's use a girl this time. Little Susie. She's been doing independent work in a subject that is difficult for her. So we already know the setting antecedent is, let's say it's math. Math is difficult for little Susie. We know that. She knows that. So that's the setting antecedent. But we've given her work to do because that's what we do as teachers. Her behavior is to throw paper and yell out loud. So she goes, I hate stupid math, blah, blah, blah. And then you as the teacher say, Susie, you go to the office. And what happens at the office is you sit down to the office. She sits on the bench right outside the office to wait. She's given no attention, no interactions going on. She's sitting there waiting. So let's walk through this. The setting antecedent is a difficult subject. The antecedent is given the work to her. The behavior is she throws paper and yells out loud in class. The consequence is this. What's the function of that behavior chain? Say again. There you go. So see how easy it is? When we get it clear, it's black and white, but it's not black and white ever. It's gray. But this is a real simple one. We see it easily. But this is where we start, and we can start seeing the more difficult ones to see them a little bit better. So that is a complete chain of behavior. Now, with any chain, you can intervene at different points in that chain to change the outcome. We can intervene at the antecedent level, we can intervene at the behavior level, and we can intervene at the consequence level. So any of those three places we can intervene to change the outcome of that chain of behaviors. Personally, if you can do it at the antecedent level, it's better for everybody. It's proactive, not reactive. So if you can change it there, it's a lot more work up front than it is, but it keeps you from getting to power struggles with kids. That's the thing. So that's a really interesting process. That is a chain of behavior. Here's another one. Y'all read through this one and tell me what's the function of the behavior. So what do you guys think the function of the behavior of this chain of behavior chain is? Is it to get or to avoid, escape? Which is it?
Avoid.
I'm sorry?
Avoid.
Avoid? Okay, walk through it with me. So they're in a large group activity, which means what? Lots of people. What does this individual do?
Yells on the call.
And what does he get? Let's say he tells it, Mrs. Smith has a tattoo. And everybody laughs. You're so funny, Billy. So what do you think? Is it to avoid or is it to get? They think he's the Joker. It's to get, doesn't it? You see it now? So we could change that antecedent to make it small group or one-on-one instead of large group. We could change the behavior, we could change the consequence, all different things. So that's how we look at the functions of behavior. Also, it's really important to talk to the kid, to those who know this kid, to know what the functions of those behaviors could be. When I was doing psychological and functional behavior assessments, I would even get with the kids' extracurricular coaches, their baseball team coach, their soccer coach, and find out how they do there and how their behavior interacts with them that way. Okay. Did it slip into the Netherlands? So we very often avoid talking to the student. Sometimes the best thing you can do is talk to the students. They tell me the most information about themselves all the time. So you give Miss Smith a real hard time in class. What can you do? What can we do together so you don't do that and give her a break? Talk to him about that. Talk to the student. Figure it out. My most insightful opportunities were taking walks with kids, doing counseling with kids out on the playground, or playing catch with them, or playing basketball with them. Just talking to them, get them away from this stimulus and figuring it out. Important stuff. They want to be heard. That's a big deal. All right, so now then, we've talked about antecedents, we've talked about some consequences. Let's talk about behaviors. We have a target behavior is the behavior that we want to change. That's always the way we look at it. Behaviors that we want to change are target behaviors. We want them to engage in an appropriate behavior of some kind. So that appropriate behavior is a replacement behavior. So remember, when we look back on the foundations of skills, the foundations of behavior, sometimes kids, if they don't have the skill, they can't do it. So we've got to teach them a skill. Let's take an example of a kid that calls out in class to get attention from the teacher. Says, hey teacher, yells out, right? Is that disruptive? What's the most common used attention-seeking device for teachers in the classroom? The best one. Simplest one. Raise the hand. But that's a skill. It takes forethought, is it not? It's a behavioral skill. When did we learn that raising our hand gets attention? Back in kindergarten or pre-K, sometime. Now we do it on Zoom. We can have a little Zoom thing, raise your hand. And sometimes your professor doesn't see it. But still, that's a way to raise your hand, get your attention. So how do we teach a replacement behavior? We're going to teach little Steve a replacement behavior of raising his hand instead of calling out? Are we going to say, Steve, here's the deal. You want my attention. I want you to get it in an appropriate way. If you notice how the other kids are doing it, if you raise your hand and wait quietly, then I will come get you. But Steve is a little impulsive little imp, right? And so what do you think Steve's going to do? He says, yeah, yes, teacher. Yes, Mr. Cabot. Yes, Mr. Cabot. I'm gonna raise my hand and wait patiently for you. So you ask a question, and there's little Steve is there. He goes, Mr. Cabot, oh, yes, just raise my hand. Oh, Mr. Cabot. And then does that, right? So what do? You go over to him and say, great job raising your hand. But next time, let's raise our hand before you holler out. Remember, raise your hand, wait quietly. So he does that a few more times. You reinforce raising the hand by saying, great job raising your hand. But remember, next time, and then the next week, Steve does this. Hey, rather than going, hey, and then raising his hand, right? He's raising his hand at the same time. Is that better? That was a change of behavior, was it not? So what he's doing, he says, great job raising your hand. Next, and you do it immediately. You don't wait. You do it immediately. Say, next time, wait quietly. He said, okay. So then he does, the next week he does a thing. Raises his hand, goes, wait. Hey, Mr. Cameron, right? So you go over to him and say, great job raising your hand. Next time before talking out, wait for me to come and say something. So you do that for another week, and then the next week he does this. He does this. You go, hey Steve, what's going on? What can we do? Right? And he's got it. It's taken 3 weeks, but what happens if you do the whole thing with Steve? Why are you being so disruptive in the class? You know, all that, that stuff, you're not going to change the behavior. You're not teaching them anything. And remember, we learned through a series of positive reinforcements and punishers. The punishment is actually the ignoring the inappropriate and only focusing on the appropriate, right? So those are things we do for replacement behaviors, for the target behavior. And that we're going to have to do a combination of both. Change the antecedent, change the replacement behavior, and teach it, and then reinforce it. But it becomes easier when we change the antecedent. So reinforcers can be anything. Cat hair in the mouth. Okay, reinforcers can be anything. It can be tokens. Think about a reinforcer. You guys have a job? What's a reinforcer for you? Your paycheck, it's a token. You do something and you promise that you'll get money at the end of the 2 weeks or a month, or your teacher, end of the month, you get a paycheck that doesn't look like a paycheck. It's good. You guys being special educators, I'll tell you what, you can go anywhere in the country and get a job. Anywhere. Because there are so few special ed teachers. We are so low on special ed teachers. Anywhere in the country you want to teach, you can do that. Guaranteed. You'll have to recertify in different states, but that's not a hard task. Cool thing. All right, social is my favorite reinforcer, the attaboys. I like attaboys. The fist bumps, the pats on the back. We can't do pats on the back right now. I love hugs. I'm a hugger. So I love hugs. Giving kids hugs. But the fist bumps, the attaboys, because they don't get that very much. that whole positive reinforcement from an adult is really a powerful thing. Then if they come from a family that doesn't have, so guys, if they come from a family that they don't have a dad in the picture, oh my gosh. Attention, a positive attention from a male, oh man, that is such a powerful tool. And positive attention just from an adult, anybody, from a female, from a male, from anyone can be such a positive thing for kids. We have really kind of, they need that, they struggle with that every day. Here's the interesting thing though. You're going to have to start out with a tangible, like M&Ms, think about M&Ms, and move to social. From the concrete to the abstract. You always move from the things you can touch, taste, feel, etc., to that. When I work with very severe kids, edible reinforcers are really good because they're quick, they're immediate. When they chew it up and they swallow it, it's gone. So you don't have to mess with taking it up. Then when you move to like a toy, you have to set a timer and say, okay, that's 15 seconds, the time's up, playing with your toy. And then you have to pick it up. This kind of, you have to hide it sometimes with the real cognitively disabled kids. So it's kind of interesting, but you move from that to hopefully to natural. The natural one is where the kids are feeling positive about what they're doing. They feel good about what they do. But we're training them to go that way all the time. If learning to ride the bike is the goal, riding a bike, no matter how slow or fast it is good, is great, right? So, and a kid that can ride a bike that never rode a bike, boy, and that's just the greatest thing in the world. So that's important. So reinforcers, there's how we increase the behaviors that we want to see. Now, punishers, we use a type of punishment. Punishment's got a bad rap. When we think punishment, we think of something like spanking or swats, all those kind of things. Timeout is a punishment. It's supposed to reduce the behavior. But anytime you use a punisher, you need to use a reinforcer for the behavior that you want to see. Because all you're doing is punishing the behavior you don't want and not teaching them what you want, what's going to happen? It's tough. Okay, I'm going to use a biblical reference here. In scripture it talks about when somebody gets rid of the demons out of the house, they sweep the house clean. But if they don't replace it with something good, what happens? The demon goes get someone and brings it back into the house, right? Which means then if their behavior is going to get worse. So what you do is you replace that bad stuff with good stuff, and eventually there's no room for the bad stuff, right? So I'm sorry, I don't mean to go off on that tangent, but it just always comes to mind. That whole story really resonates with me because it's all about this. We fill them up with good, the bad can't live there. You know what I mean? So that's the thing. It's kind of that's the whole positive behavior supports thing. It's not bribing a kid. It's teaching them to be more socially acceptable. All right, and when we use reinforcers, the thing is, you always do it immediately, you do it frequently, you start to wean it off as time goes on, but you do it with enthusiasm. I mean, you really celebrate that child. Steve, you raised your hand without hollering out. Great job, Steve, raising your hand. Fantastic. You know? eye contact, giving the direct eye contact, that's powerful. You describe the behavior, remember again, good job raising your hand, not just good job. Sometimes you do it with anticipation. I have when I have a whole class and I'm wanting to change the whole class's behavior, I do a mystery motivator. And I put a big question mark on the envelope and I stick it up on the wall. And I give the class a standard that I want them to meet, to get if they get all their assignments, their homework assignments in by Thursday, on Friday, we're going to pull down the mystery motivator. And so all week long, what are we doing? Remember to get your assignments in, because guess what we're going to do on Friday? And so positive peer pressure. Everybody's make sure you get your assignments in, the buzz. What's going on? Mystery motivators. Love it. So then on Friday, everybody's got your homework assignments in for this week. Let's see what the mystery motivator was. We're going to have a popcorn party. And then you pull out all the popcorn and you know, 2 bags of popcorn is no big deal. But that's the thing, you know, you do it with anticipation. You have variety. Find what the kids like. Do those things all the time. Those are the exciting things. So it's really, you make it fun for them. And remember, we talked about skills deficit. It can impact. We've got to teach those behaviors that we want to see. If you don't have a clue honestly, if you don't have a clue what to do in a given situation, are you probably going to act inappropriately in that situation? Amen. You know, thank God for our parents. They taught us these things. When you go to church, you sit down and you be quiet. You sit with your hands, or you give them coloring books to be quiet and pay attention. Take notes, draw pictures. When you go to the restaurant, you don't get up and run around and crawl under the tables. We had a cousin of my wife's that they let their child run every which way, but our kids would sit in the chairs. There's positive expectation. That's what we expected. When we get out of the car, he said, what is the behavior that we're going to have in the restaurant? We're going to sit and be quiet and talk to each other. We're not going to get up and run around. They knew that we positive expectancy. They expected that. So it's teaching it, right? So that's important that we need to understand. This is huge, 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 huge. You know? So here are the components for a good behavior support plan. You need to have ways that you're going to increase the behaviors, the desired behaviors, the target, not the target behaviors, the behaviors of replacement. There you go. I get this. Trembling over time. Changing the antecedents is a primary way to do it. If it's a difficult subject, well, you give it to them in increments and make it not so difficult. You teach those skills too, academics. You provide positive consequence, not just negative things. You want to increase the replacement behaviors. And then you manage the inappropriate behaviors, like you did with Steve, not taking 3 weeks to get him to raise his hand without yelling out. But, you know, in 3 weeks, guess what? He's got a life skill, right? I remember one time, when teaching my kids that after they finish their meal, and it's time they pick up their plate and take it into the kitchen, put them in the sink. And then, after they get that skill down, and you say, good job taking your dishes in there. The next thing is what? To rinse them when you put them in the sink. And then the next skill is, and it might take several months to finally get there. And then you have to reinforce along the way, because I'm 63 and I don't always do it. But, that's the training. That's the thing, the same thing, right? So it's a life skill. Once they learn that life skill, then it becomes easy. It's easier to get them to engage in pro-social behavior. So let's look at these things. This is a chain of behavior. This is a change where we change the antecedent. Let's look at the top one here. And do we see the chain of behavior that's occurred to where the function of the behavior was that he was getting, wanting to get attention from his peers and teacher. See that he had a difficult assignment, he maybe throws paper, teacher's correcting, I'm like, oh, don't do that, John. And peers laugh, he's getting attention. So we're going to make this assignment one where you can work together in a group. So what are we doing right off the bat? A group assignment, is he going to have attention from his peers? Right away. So does he have to act inappropriate to get attention? He's going to act appropriate to get attention. So we're setting up positive expectancy. They get the work done, they turn it in, and he gets attention by getting attaboys, right? Now it's very simple, but again, it's just showing you the process. Let's look at another one. Here's a consequence. Instead of what we've done is we've trained everybody to ignore John's behavior. That's a punisher in a sense. We're ignoring the behavior, reducing that behavior. So, and we only give attention to when he's working on a task, but give him good job working on your task. But we're ignoring when he's off task. That's going to take even longer than doing the other stuff that we've done. See what I mean? But still, it's appropriate, but you really got to think it through. Do you want to do it that all the time? Do you want to try something different? I always go for the antecedents first. To me, it's the easiest way to go. It's all in the antecedent. How you frame it. If you can get them on the right path from the get-go, you're done. You know what I mean? So, but this is, again, we can intervene at the antecedent level, at the behavior level, or the consequence level. Either way, either of the three. And this is an example of a behavior level. You guys see how that all works? Cool. These are directly out of the handouts I gave you. So you have the handouts that talk about it. So functions and strategies to get something tangible. These might be some strategies that you might want to use. To escape something unpleasant, these are some strategies, but you've got all these in your handouts. Get attention from peers, there's some strategies. Functions of getting sensory stimulation is another one. Kids are either going to be sensory seeking or sensory defensive. Kids with ADHD tend to be sensory seeking. They need input. So you might get a gel cushion for them to sit on so they can squirm in the chair and without giving stuff, different things. So these are some strategies you can do. But no, if they're seeking that sensory input or trying to escape it, like sometimes it's too hot in a room or too cold, and you start, if it's too cold, you start moving around to get warmed up. If you're like me, I sweat all the time anyway. So. It's interesting. So, okay. Another thing that you guys need to remember when you're developing a behavior intervention plan is that always something will go wrong. You won't get it right the first time. But that's okay. Did you learn something from not getting it right the first time? You bet. You knew not what to do. Now you have to do something different. You know not to do that anymore. Let's try this. Right? So powerful. So what can go wrong will go wrong. It's kind of the Murphy's Law. Would you just love working? It's a good report. Remember to collect data. You collect data the same way that you collected for the baseline, so that way you know if you made progress or not. Apples to apples, not apples to oranges. And then modify the intervention if you need to. It's okay to modify it. And even if a school psychologist who thinks they run the world has given you the behavior plan, change it. They don't work with a kid in the class every day. Change it. Work with it. Try it. And then if it doesn't work, make some modifications. Empower you. Go ahead. All right. So remember, all behaviors learned. The environment impacts behavior. Skills deficit's huge. The team approach is huge. And the main piece of the puzzle is relationship. If you don't have a relationship, a positive relationship with a child, they'll never act appropriately for you in class. Think back on your relationships with your teachers. The ones that you really wanted to have their respect, you did good. You did what they asked you to do, right? You bet. You bet. So that's an important piece. And so we think that one through all the time. We'll look at the maladjustment piece 2 weeks. And I'll start off with this stuff and then I'll kind of promise for that. So what we're going to do tonight is that we're going to take a 10-minute break first, and then we'll come back at 5:45, and then I want you to pair up, and I've got this activity broken down into steps onto pages like this, so each pair will get an activity pack and some markers. And we're going to do this, and then I want you to write your group name, a group number, your names on the back of the pack, because I'm going to put them up so we can see them. So they're kind of be fun. Okay? So we're going to take a 10-minute break, get some air, get some water, and we'll come back in just about 10 minutes. Cool. Okay, we're taking a quick break. So at 6:30, we'll meet back in here and we'll go over our different results of our case. And so, Vera, we're doing a case, and I didn't, and Anita, we're doing a case in here in class. So I'll send it to you guys, and then you guys can look at that later and just. At 6:30, we'll be back on, and you'll be able to hear the different folks do their cases. Okay? So I don't have anything for you guys. You guys can just take a break. Sound good? Okay. We'll see you guys back at 6:30. We'll so let's get back into this and just so we can. All right, so there we go.
Do you want them?
You keep the stuff. Yeah, I want that.
Can I just write all of the girls?
Yeah.
All of the
Girls.
girls.
Two guys. All right, so I just want to debrief this with you guys. I typed it up real quickly. The case, it's a short case. So I typed it up and put it up here. So Susie's a fifth grader. She's kind of a little too, isn't she? Not kind of not very friendly with her peers. She's physically and verbally aggressive to her peers, and sometimes uses profanity and name calling, and she does disrupt class, but most often she's found these behaviors are found at unstructured times in the playground, before school, and at lunch. That's when we play smear the guy that had the ball. Always good. Yeah, well, I got smeared a lot. Okay, I was a fat kid in junior high. I mean, seriously. Okay, so when we start taking this apart and we look at this is a real simple, short case, but this a lot of times is all you get. But at the same time, there's a lot of information there, isn't there? You know that she's not interacting well with her peers. She's got difficulty there. She's not following. She's not being socially appropriate most of the time. A lot of different things. So when we look at it, we describe the antecedent, the behavior, the consequence. What was the antecedent?
Unstructured time.
Unstructured time. See, that's a really big benefit, big deal, because most aggressive behaviors happen in unstructured times. Playground, cafeteria, sometimes the lunch ladies cause the kids to, no, I'm just joking. Hallway, those kind of things, right? So the behaviors, what were the behaviors that we saw? Aggressive, physically and verbally, correct? And name calling, profanity. As a school psychologist, I would want to know what were the words, because the S word is much less offensive than the F word is. Maybe I'm just thin-skinned, but when I go to a movie and they use that F word all the time, I feel like I'm beat up by the time I'm out of the movie. Oh, crap! How many times can you use that word? Oh. And for many different reasons. So my ears are all bloody. Okay, so, and then what were the consequences that happened to her? Really, not much, was there? Peers went and helped out the others. So there might be a little bit of jealousy going on, you know, maybe there might want some attention from others too. There might be that piece, but she doesn't know how to get it. That might be an interesting thing to investigate. But for the most part, it was that she was I really think that she was wanting attention. What did you guys want to come up
We put to get away from the students.
with? To get away from
Like, so
students?
that way, like when she's hitting people, they're leaving her alone and they're going to the other student.
But then it caused her to kind of act worse too. So yeah, there's two elements to it. She didn't want to have that relationship, but that she does want to have that relationship. Yeah, that approach avoidant thing going on. So it's either or. So you can set them up both ways. I would really want to investigate the whole inappropriate social skills. She doesn't know how to get attention. She doesn't know how to make friends. She doesn't. So investigate that. You know, that's kind of an interesting thing to look at. So, and it's the thing, if you've got the function wrong, that's okay. Because you just go back later. You know, you say, oh, this isn't working. We've got to change this. So we'll fix it. You know, that's the good thing about that. Okay, so then the functions was to look at it. I kind of, like I say, I lean toward the get peers' attention is kind of where I lean a little bit more. But if you do see the escape piece, I'll have them all there too. So, because I can see both. So good. And then what kind of interventions did you come up with? What about antecedent ones?
Keep her busy.
See?
I said, keep her busy, keep her occupied,
Yeah,
keep her
Anita.
doing something.
This is the voice of God. No, Anita, what did you say?
Oh, I said, keep her busy, keep her occupied, keep her mind going and take her mind off of the destructive behavior.
Structure, could it not? Structured environment. Behaviors, what do we think? Got some behavior ones, teach social skills, teach how to say, hey, I don't want to be messing with you today in a nice way. You know? What about consequences? Reinforce when she's being nice, ignore when she's, separate her when she's not. That'd be a good one. There's several. Did you find the forms? And by the way, guys, online, I'll send those forms, put them in the, I'll put them in the content page whenever I post the video. But did you find the forms, the different interventions you read through to be helpful? These, I'll give them to you electronically. Put them in your skills bucket for later on. It's good stuff. And, so you can use them in your classrooms when you get into the classroom. Seriously good stuff. So, okay, that was a simple one. I'll bring more. The rest of the semester we'll be doing more. They'll get more complicated. As we get to the end of the semester, we're really going to look at some really complicated ones and try to decipher those out. Because you want to be able to do the hard stuff. You know? Any questions, comments, thoughts? We're getting into the meat of this because it's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting. Now you can go and you can do your best friend. You can do some behavior analysis on your best friend or your dog, whichever. Great. Fantastic, guys. You guys are awesome. I will see you guys next week. You guys stay healthy, stay safe. Bye, guys. Bye, Aurora. I'll see you guys next week. Hang in there.